Imagine standing at the cash register, ready to buy something you desperately need. Maybe it's a new job, a stable relationship, or just a quiet night's sleep. But instead of pulling out a credit card, you open your chest and the cashier asks, "How much patience do you have? How much joy can you offer as collateral?" Because, you see, your emotions are the currency here. Sounds like a terrible sci-fi movie, right? But stop for a moment. What if it wasn't fiction? What if I told you that right now, as you're watching this, you're already living in that world? You're just not checking your balance. You're emotionally bankrupt, and suddenly, every human interaction requires currency you simply don't have. Sounds terrifying, right? Well, here's the thing, you're probably closer to this reality than you think. And if this idea just sent a chill down your spine, do me a favor and hit that like button. Because we're about to explore something that might fundamentally change how you see your inner world. And trust me, you're going to want to subscribe so you don't miss where this rabbit hole leads. So let's talk about what happens when emotions become the most valuable commodity you'll never see in your wallet. Think about your last genuinely exhausting day, not physically exhausting, but that soul-draining, emotionally depleted kind of exhausted where even mustering a smile feels like lifting a boulder. That's your emotional currency running low. And in our hypothetical world, where emotions are actual currency, you just had a massive spending day. Maybe you invested heavily in anxiety about that work presentation, splurged your happiness on pretending everything's fine when it's not, and hemorrhaged patience dealing with that one person who just knows how to push every single button. Now you're standing there, emotionally overdrawn, and life's still sending you bills. Here's where it gets interesting. Then this emotional economy. Not all feelings are created equal. Joy, that's your premium currency, the gold standard everyone's chasing. Contentment, solid middle-class emotional stability, but anxiety and dread. Those are predatory loans with impossible interest rates that keep you perpetually in debt. And here's the kicker that nobody talks about. We're all out here spending emotions we can't afford on. Things that don't deserve them. Like we're emotional billionaires, when really, most of us are living paycheck to paycheck in the feelings department. You ever notice how some people seem emotionally rich? They've got compassion to spare, enthusiasm that never seems to dim, resilience that bounces back from anything. Meanwhile, you're rationing your emotional responses like you're preparing for a feelings famine. What's their secret? Did they inherit some massive emotional trust fund? Or are they just better at managing their internal economy? The answer is going to surprise you. But first, let's talk about the emotional stock market, because, yeah, that's a thing in this scenario. Your emotions fluctuate in value based on circumstances, relationships, and experiences. That excitement you felt for your new job, it appreciated in value every day for the first month, then slowly depreciated as reality set in. The love you have for someone, that can either compound with interest over time or crash spectacularly if mismanaged. And trauma. Trauma is like the housing crisis of 2008. For your emotional economy devalues everything you own and leaves you wondering how you'll ever recover. But here's what makes this metaphor so unsettlingly accurate. We actually do treat emotions like currency already. We just don't realize it. You save up patience for difficult conversations. You spend joy on experiences. You invest trust in relationships, hoping for returns. You even engage in emotional labor, literally giving away your feelings as a service to others, often without fair compensation. Sound familiar? That's because you're already living in this economy. You just haven't been reading your bank statements. And some of us, we've been bankrupt for years without knowing it. Now, before you spiral into an existential crisis, and honestly, who could blame you? Let me ask you something. When was the last time you actually budgeted your emotional spending? And I don't mean that in some abstract self-help way. I mean, really, genuinely considered whether you could afford the emotional cost of something before you committed to it. That friend who only calls when they need something. That's an emotional subscription service you keep paying for without getting any value back. That grudge you've been holding for 3 years. That's not an investment. That's a sunk cost fallacy bleeding you dry. The perfectionism that keeps you up at night. That's compound interest on fear. And baby, your balance is in the red. Here's the beautiful, terrible truth. Though unlike real money, you can actually generate more emotional currency, but it requires something most people never do. You have to stop spending what you don't have. See, we live in a world that demands emotional payments constantly. Your job needs your enthusiasm, even when you're running on fumes. Your family needs your patience, even when your reserves are empty. Social media needs your outrage, your validation, your envy, your comparison. It's an emotional slot machine that always wins. And you keep playing because somewhere along the way you forgot you're allowed to walk away from the casino. But what if you started treating your emotions like the finite, valuable resource they actually are? What if you looked at that drama-filled group chat and decided, sorry, can't afford it? What if you checked your emotional balance before saying yes to things you want to say no to? This isn't about becoming some cold, calculating person who treats feelings like a spreadsheet, though, honestly, a little emotional accounting wouldn't hurt most of us. This is about recognizing that you only have so much to give, and right now, you're probably giving it to all the wrong things. Think about it like this. Someone asked to borrow $100. You'd think about it, right? You'd consider whether you have it, whether they'd pay you back, whether you could afford to lose it. But when someone asks you to emotionally carry their problems, absorb their anger, or diminish yourself to make them comfortable, you just do it. You spend that emotional currency without a second thought, and then you wonder why you feel so empty. Here's the plot twist though, and this is where things get really interesting. The people who seem emotionally wealthy, they're not necessarily generating more emotions than you. They're just better at protecting what they have and investing in things that actually pay returns. They've learned the secret of emotional wealth. Things not about having more feelings. It's about not wasting them on things that don't matter. They've stopped attending every emotional emergency they're invited to. They've quit the job of managing everyone else's feelings. They've learned to say no without explaining, without justifying, without apologizing. They've discovered that boundaries aren't walls to keep people out, their investment strategies to keep your emotional wealth in. And you know what the craziest part is? Once you start thinking this way, you see emotional poverty everywhere. You see it in the person who gives and gives until they've got nothing left and wonders why nobody appreciates them. They're emotionally bankrupt, but still trying to spend. You see it in the people who are angry all the time because anger is the only currency they know how to generate, even though it's destroying them from the inside. You see it in yourself. In those moments when you genuinely can't feel anything because you've spent everything you had on things that never gave anything back. But here's where hope enters the picture. Because unlike actual bankruptcy, emotional bankruptcy can be reversed. You can rebuild your emotional wealth, but it requires something radical in our current culture. Requires you to be selfish with your feelings. And I don't mean selfish in the negative way we usually think about it. I mean selfish in the sense that you prioritize your emotional well-being the same way you'd prioritize not setting your actual money on fire. You start making deposits instead of just withdrawals. You invest in experiences and relationships that actually appreciate in value. You cut off the emotional vampires who've been draining your account for years. You learn to sit with discomfort instead of spending peace of mind trying to fix everything immediately. You discover that sometimes the most valuable emotional currency is the one you choose not to spend. So here's your homework. And yeah, I'm giving you homework because transformation requires action, not just inspiration. For the next week, I want you to track your emotional spending. Not with an actual journal. If that feels like too much, just pay attention. Notice when you're giving away emotions and what you're getting in return. Notice when you feel depleted and what came before that feeling. Notice who and what consistently drains you versus who and what replenishes you. Because awareness is the first step to wealth in any economy, including the one happening inside your head right now. And when you start noticing you're going to see some uncomfortable truths. You're going to realize that some of your longest relationships are emotionally predatory. You're going to discover that some of your daily habits are slowly bankrupting you. You're going to understand why you feel so tired all the time. It's not life that's exhausting. It's the emotional hemorrhaging you've normalized. But you're also going to find opportunities, places where you can save, investments you can make, revenue streams you never tapped into because you didn't know they existed. Because here's the final piece of this puzzle: emotional wealth isn't just about conservation, it's about generation. The people who seem to have infinite patience, boundless joy, endless compassion, they figured out how to generate emotional currency through practices that actually work. Maybe it's meditation that creates dividends of peace. Maybe it's creativity that manufactures joy. Maybe it's connection with people who actually give back that creates compound interest on love. Maybe it's therapy that finally processes the trauma debt that's been crushing them for decades. Whatever it is, they've stopped trying to survive on the emotional poverty wages the world offers and started creating their own wealth. So here's the question I want to leave you with, and this is the one that's going to keep you up tonight in the best possible wave. Emotions really were currency, and you could see your balance right now. What number would be looking back at you? Are you thriving or barely surviving? Are you building wealth or drowning in debt? And most importantly, are you ready to stop being emotionally broke and start being the wealthiest version of yourself? Because that version exists. They're just waiting for you to stop spending everything you have on things that don't deserve it. If this hit you somewhere deep, if you felt that uncomfortable recognition of truth, then you know what to do. Subscribe, because we're going to keep exploring these silent battles of the human mind. And something tells me you're ready to stop fighting alone. Your emotional fortune starts now.